You can be both, on the floor crying hysterically and so overjoyed that he's set free. I mean, there's so much of this duality. And
how did that even happen? We could call that a coincidence, but when it happens 9 times, is it a coincidence?
Every relationship we had changed in that moment.
In that pain and in that difficult conversation lies the solution and the freedom to let go of that and to move forward and to evolve, to ascend. That's what we want to do while we're here.
You could name any scenario for me that would be beautiful and wonderful, and I could always finish the sentence by saying, yeah, and that would be much more magical, better, what have you, if Anthony were here. Anthony and I signed up for this. Anthony and I and Samara and anyone else related to this signed up for this for something greater. Everything that I've needed has showed up just in time. I'm Neal Tricarico, and my wife, Samara, and I are grateful you're here for this unique podcast experience. We share the story of the loss of our son, Anthony, the movement that has grown out of the unimaginable grief, and the legacy we're building so that no teen ever feels this alone or lost again. We're here to give parents the resources to support their children and the communities around them, because it truly takes a tribe.
The Endurant Show is a testament to post-traumatic growth, the belief that even in the aftermath of deep grief, healing and purpose can emerge. It's a space for truth, connection, and hope, where real conversations around mental health, autism, suicide prevention, and resilience take center stage.
Healing doesn't always start with a diagnosis. It often starts with being heard, and we've created a community just for that.
Each episode, we sit down with teens, parents, experts, and advocates to share honest stories, tools, and resources. Because we believe that awareness is the cure, you don't have to hold your grief alone, and you don't have to run from it.
Through these conversations, we're building a community grounded in understanding, support, and lasting change. If you've ever felt alone, unheard, or unsure of how to keep going, this space is for you.
Hello, I'm DavidJi, and welcome to this next episode of the Endurant Movement podcast. And if you've checked in with our previous episodes, then you know that we've been exploring the origin story of Endurant, of how this movement was born, and how Neal Tricarico and Samara Tricarico navigated this intense amount of loss and grief. And we're going to take that even deeper today. And so thank you, Neal and Samara, for being here as we continue to journey through this process. In the moments and days after Anthony's second passing, what were the inner conversations as you tried to navigate and figure out the new normal?
Well, it's a really interesting question. Those first few days, from my experience, was almost like, if you've heard of the pink cloud in recovery, I felt so free and at peace that Anthony was no longer suffering. And I felt a certainty and confidence that he was on the other side, in heaven, in the light, in this most beautiful place. So for me, it was like that feeling that addicts will share, like just the beauty of being free from the grip. So I'd say the first week or 10 days was really that. And then also, quite frankly, readjusting to being back home. I mean,
right. You had been living at the hospital,
yes,
essentially for over 2 months.
Yes. And we had a lot of friends and family. And then also just knowing that there was nothing that needed to be done. I don't mean this in a negative woe is me way, but my business had already imploded. Our son had passed. There was nothing other than making sure our daughter got to where she needed to. And we were still getting so much help from friends and family. It was like an exhale of sorts.
And there was a grounding that happened during that time too, that with Anthony's remains, because we knew he was coming to the end of his life, we had chosen to do a water cremation. So there's alkaline salts that helps, the remaining bones and tissue. And so we had chosen to do that for Anthony. And then also we, pretty soon after that, took a trip to Canada, and we went to the national park in Banff and spent time in nature and really sort of alchemizing that experience and communing, getting into the water, walking on the earth, kind of letting our pain translate out through our physical experience into the earth to sort of re-alchemize that energy. And that was also the beginning of the awakening of the relationship with Anthony in spirit form. He had been transitioning, then he fully transitioned, and we were into a space of nature and went through experiences where we were then able to start to see him on the other side and see ways that his energy and his spirit could manifest and interact with us, and we could actually continue to have a relationship with him. It happened right away. There wasn't this like, oh, and then a year later or a month later. It was right away. We started seeing those signs and feeling him, and that was part of that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and it was born out of, again, our community. So our dear friends Ryan and Claire O'Connor, who own properties in these beautiful places in Canada, set this up for us, and also a journey with a medicine man. Interestingly enough, Anthony and I were medman at the Adventure Guides camping. And so,
for many years.
Yeah, for many years. But so many of our community, when I say, people are like, oh, I prayed for how I can help you, or I've been looking for ways that I can help you. You're so right. Their gift of that opportunity to go to a place that we'd never been to with Anthony, so we didn't have to worry about memories, where the three of us could just unplug and connect with nature. And Claire set up this journey with this medicine man that really unlocked those first experiences of seeing Anthony.
I mean, walking with bears is his name. And so the journey was supposed to be driving up to this waterfall, and then we would, walk across the bridge to the waterfall. So we met him. We drove to the bottom of the mountain, and the gate was closed. And he said, well, would you like to walk? And so we ended up walking. I mean,
it's 12 miles each way. Yeah. I don't think any of us knew it was that far.
Uphill.
Yeah.
Uphill. So we had
for the first 12.
Yeah. I mean, it was, definitely a pilgrimage of sorts where Belina, Neal, and I, and Walking with Bears, walked up to this waterfall.
Did you feel that you were with Anthony during this?
We started before we walked up. We, did a ritual where we put our hands into the water, and we asked Mother Earth for protection and guidance. And as it was at that moment, right, I put my hands in the water, and a single ant came, walking through my legs as I was kind of squatting down on the earth. And so right away, it was obvious that his spirit, his energy was with us on that journey. There were many aspects of that journey, but when we got to the top,
I think an important, so that was the first moment, the single ant. And then there was a moment on the journey where I think Walking with Bears and you called out, you could see ancestors in the rocks. So I could see Anthony's face. then there was a point in the journey where I think we all got tired and uncertain, like, how far is this? So we stopped. He pulled it up on the map, and it looked like we were only about halfway. So there was real uncertainty as whether we should continue going. And then another single ant walked in front of us on the pavement. And that's when we all knew we had to keep going.
When we got to the waterfall itself.
So this is 12 miles uphill.
Yeah. We got to the waterfall and a storm blew in, which at the end of Anthony's life was heavily affected by neurostorming. So here was this huge storm, thunder and lightning. We had
to take shelter.
Yeah, but we were ready to get in the water with our bathing suits. So we stripped down.
Oh, that's right.
Got in the water, and then quickly the downpour came, and we thought we must seek shelter. And there was Walking with Bears with the door to the outhouse open. So that was the only building that we could go in. Luckily, it was clean, but we sat down and had our lunch, and he saged and did some drumming, and we laughed hysterically, which was, again, Anthony's spirit with us, just bringing comedy to such a moment of, that could have been so tense and scary. It was a moment of relief, and we laughed. The sun came out. We did some more drumming. We walked back, and on the walk back is where you felt the push, right?
Yeah. So I had blisters because I think I was in flip-flops because, again, we were supposed to drive up, do the ceremony, jump in. And so I had fallen way behind, and it was and like, honestly, like the first time he was like, oh, look in the rocks for ancestors. I'm kind of like, what? But then like I did, and it was like click, like I could see Anthony. And then I would start to see and experience. And a couple things happened on the walk back. We actually stumbled upon a black bear. So walking with bears, we were actually walking with bears. And I had fallen so far behind. I wasn't questioning whether I could make it, but there was this uphill incline that I was sort of struggling through with this blister. And it was the first time I felt like a physical presence kind of pushing me. And then ultimately, when we got to that crest, we saw this hoary marmot sunning after the rain, and we're like, oh, this would be a great spot to take a picture. And we took a picture, just the three of us, and didn't think anything of it. But later when we looked at the picture, the beautiful beam of light shining down upon us was Anthony. I think this was our real, for the three of us, that first step into the thinness of the veil, if you will, and that ability to connect with Anthony.
And so here's this young man. Here's this young man who's a marathoner.
Yeah.
What's that?
26 miles.
About what you did up and down. So if you're struggling, it helps to have a marathoner give you the little push in that process. At this point in your life, you're just trying to figure out what is the new normal.
Yes.
First of all, you were living in a residence right next to the hospital room. Then suddenly there's that first night where you're home.
Yeah.
And perhaps it's the first night where you realize we're lying in bed and Anthony's not in a building next to us. He's everywhere.
Yes. Yes.
Just that deeper understanding. Was that comforting or saddening, or obviously, a blend? Is this entire journey for you one of polar opposites and being able to embrace the agony and the euphoria of this aspect of your lives?
I would say a big yes. I mean, I think you touched on something, that the sort of agony and euphoria. I mean, you know me, both of you know me. I'm somebody who throughout my life has sought to squeeze out every bit of fun, love, joy from a moment. I mean, my propensity for connection, love, joy is way up here. But at this point, through 49 and a half years of my life, the sum total of adversity that I've had doesn't even equate to what the last year has been like. So my baseline for adversity or pain was right here. now with this loss, it's here. So it's created this vast spectrum of experiences. And again, I'm trying to keep myself from going past this point into suffering. The depths of pain keep it possible that I can feel this joy. When I lapse into suffering, that whole spectrum is gone. So when you ask about those first few nights at home, they were brutal. The lack of Anthony's physical presence there was so extraordinary. Like where we're used to hearing him walk around at night or the door clicking open when he goes to the gym that morning. I remember, like, I would say for me, experiencing you, that was probably one of the top 3 most difficult nights. Then you think about now some of these pain points later are more of connection points. So it really is this idea of the and some of the things that seemed impossible and that we couldn't live through. Like I was like, we got to move, we got to sell, we got to get out of here. Can't do it, and then even within a few weeks later, it's like, oh gosh, we can't go anywhere. Like there's so much energy and so many memories attached here.
Mm-hmm. I think too, it's expanding into our multidimensional reality or existence, that emotions that previously seemed contradictory now can exist simultaneously. You can be both devastated and relieved. You can be both, on the floor crying hysterically and so overjoyed that he's set free. I mean, there's so much of this duality and these, seemingly contradictory feelings and emotions that now occur together, and that's okay. And it's a journey of acceptance and embracing and allowing that experience to unfold, and just being gentle with ourselves and giving ourselves grace, like individually giving, me to myself, giving myself grace, but then giving Neal grace, giving Belina grace, giving our family, our friends. We're all going through so many different emotions and experiences, and to give each other that grace and that space to experience and let your experience unfold as it is for you, because you are your own unique expression. And so just to allow and give space to one another to let that happen, it's a beautiful expression of love that's been born out of this too.
So we could say that you've had relationships with 3 different expressions of Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
First, and I don't know how much time and attention you were thinking about his soul during his first 15, 16, 17 years, right? It was always as a physical presence and essence.
Yeah.
And then there was that 9 weeks where you were having interactions with something beyond his physical sense, and you were seeking out people who could help you understand, where is he now? What's going on here? Is he just in his head? Is he a soul? Is he a spirit? Is he speaking to us from another realm? All those things, which sometimes you probably were like, makes total sense. And other times you were like, who knows how true this is? And then, of course, your relationship with Anthony's soul, essence, spirit in the aftermath of his departure from this earth plane. So in that process, there are all the signs, all the synchronicities, how did that even happen? We could call that a coincidence, but when it happens 9 times, is it a coincidence? And then suddenly you start to realize that you have a whole new way of interacting, thinking about, and communicating with him. Maybe you could talk about what your relationship is right now with the soul, the essence, the spirit of Anthony in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, he is with us throughout this journey. He is a driving force behind it. Oftentimes things are coming together in seemingly inexplicable ways that we feel that there's no other explanation than a little nudge or some guidance from him on the other side. I've had so many physical signs. I mean, from, the single ant is the biggest one for me. I see that a lot. And it's at times when I'm having a thought or a connection that is somewhat related to him, or it's a moment of confusion or something where I get clarity. I've had capital A's in particular show up. My cousin and I were working out at a gym in Anaheim when our daughters were at Disneyland, and just on the bench there was an A. And Christmas morning, before Belina woke up, Neal and I were sitting on the couch, and a capital A was illuminated above the Christmas tree. Just so obvious, capital A. And when maybe one occurrence happens and you think, oh, that's odd, that's interesting. But when you put them all together, it's such an obvious indication of his continued presence and just ways that he can show us. So I like to speak out loud to him. I believe that his soul and his energy can influence through different frequencies, like sound, through the radio, through technology. Things happen on the computer that I can't really explain, knocking noises, the computer playing a song just out of the blue, or things that are just like, I don't even try to like figure it out now, because it's like, hi buddy, I know you're here. I know you're with us. I feel you. So I talk to him. I write, I journal. I've had an experience where if I take the pen into my non-dominant hand and maybe write to him with my dominant hand, and then I let him kind of work through me and answer in my non-dominant hand. There's ways, and again, it's like Neal talked about earlier, it's being open and allowing yourself to step into that experience, and to be open to having that connection continue. I mean, if you think about the love that you have for your loved ones, their physical body dies, your love doesn't go away, doesn't change. So continuing to lean into that love and think of, okay, well, how can I continue to express that love? What are ways that I can continue to enhance that energy in that relationship? It's the same thing. And offering him the opportunity to continue to show up for us, like creating that space, like, okay, we're here, we're doing this movement with you. How do you see this going? And letting the signs come, letting the indications come. And so he has a part in it too. And he knows there's an invitation.
Yeah, I mean, I could take over an entire episode on this, but like the journey of spiritual connection is so profound. So the medium work that we did when Anthony was hospitalized and soon after he passed was so helpful in understanding about the light on the other side, heaven, if you want to call it that. And it provided me such a certainty, a knowing, if you will, that he was no longer suffering. He was in good hands with dear loved ones and safe and sound on the other side. And then now I'm navigating this like, so my initial sort of thinking was like, okay, cool, he's safe. And then we have to figure out now how we keep living. What I didn't realize was the spiritual connection that would grow between us, and the spoon feeding, it would take little crumbs for me to get where I am today. So it started with initially someone in my community suggesting maybe I read this book, Signs by Laura Lynn Jackson. And I'm so glad she did. I think it was Shirlene Jehu. If you see this, I'm so grateful that you shared that with me on Facebook. It opened up the possibility, like Samara said, it was like, hey, you don't have to be a medium or spiritual advisor. The easiest ways that they try and communicate are through technology disruptions, numbers, owls, red birds, like insects, music, if you're on shuffle. So then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like that first night I stayed home, like everyone was asleep, and I woke up and like our Wi-Fi pucks were flashing a color that I had never seen. And like sort of that was like, okay, oh, that must be what she's talking about. And what she was saying is, but you have to be open. If you're talking yourself out of it, you're going to close the door on it. So then I started to receive numbers, like number combinations, not just 1111 and 333 or 555, but at unique times. But they were never when I was suffering or in pain, but they were when I was being guided or was having breakthroughs or distinctions about where endurance can go. And so that's when I started to feel those deeper connections with him. And then it's crazy, DavidJi, like the people that would just show up in my life from there. I went to a series of Tony Robbins events, Unleash the Power Within, Date with Destiny to break through. I'm someone who looks to sort of heal in a breakthrough, immersive kind of way, not like a long, And so this actually a dear friend in
well, how about this
right, yeah.
as a sign?
Right.
You and me bump into each other
exactly on the way to that
at the airport while you're heading to the Tony Robbins event, and I'm going to visit my dad, and we're both flying to Florida. The odds of that are 1 in that we're leaving on the exact same moment. And
it's so fascinating. We were talking about the break about the 5 degrees of separation from DavidJi. And I feel like I take our sides for granted because I've expected that we would. So Audra Mealy, a guest of ours from the Chopra Center many years ago, she's like, I gotta meet with you. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be there for the event. These are long days, whatever. So normally I take the first flight out, but this time I decided I'm gonna stay a few hours. I meet with her. I'm describing numbers. And I'm like, oh, whenever I see these numbers, I'm like, that's Anthony cheering me on. And she's like, oh, dear Neal. Yes, but what time is it happening? Or in what situation? And so she turned me on to numerology. And I'm getting super woo on you guys, but so I've taken the numerology, I'm adding it to AI. And so now I'm keeping a running sort of dialogue going of when these numbers are showing up in what situation. And my connections with Anthony are so profound and deep that it's no longer like father son. It'd be like ride or die sort of brothers on this mission. And I'm getting creativity and vision like I've never had before. And whenever I struggle with where to go, I'll literally ask him, show me a sign, send me something to help me understand if I'm on the right track. And it's often within hours, but certainly within a day. And it's so clear. And so I've sort of had this transcendence from like some of these things that I always understood and were intellectual and be like, those would be interesting if I ever need them, but I don't, so I'm not worried about it, to like, okay, now he's safe on the other side. Well, now I have a relationship in many ways that's much more profound and deeper than just for sake of not going on too long. A huge turning point for me in this regard was the eve of Anthony's Belina returning to school. So basically the start of this school year. And all 3 of us were sad the day before her first day of her sophomore year and what would have been his first day of his senior year. And it was a tough day. And so we're kind of getting ready for bed, and Belina, our daughter, comes out and she's like, Dad, come into my room. There's an animal outside. It's making this weird sound, this awful sound. And I came into her room and it was this unrecognizable sound. And so we walk out front and we're still hearing the sound. So we keep walking. We hear it up above. We look up, and on the telephone wire is an owl. And I didn't know that these owls can make a screeching sound, a really kind of uncomfortable, get your attention noise, not just the hooting. And as soon as we looked up at it, it stopped making that sound. And it started like peacefully like, ooh, ooh. And it was swiveling its head from Belina to me. And we just both started crying. And it was so peaceful. And I put my arm around her and we experienced the moment together. And it was like, as the moment ended, it just majestically flew off. And not only is it the moments like that, but Anthony's ability and our community's ability to connect in ways that they connect with the other side. So in the earlier episode, we talked about the whale. No one noticed that whale until we pointed out this one woman found it. Whales keep showing up for her. She'll send me coins, like to just pull out a coin for whatever. And she's got a Canadian coin with a whale on it. Or we have this owl experience. This other woman reaches out and she's like, oh, I have experiences with owls all in this way. And it's just so fascinating because, I'm always trying to like talk myself out of it. I'm a grieving dad. I'm seeing what I want to see. But it's these people in the community that have their hearts open in this way, that have been through some trauma or some loss or some training that has connected with them on a soul level that keeps me engaged. So they're not just my experiences or our experiences, but especially in times when I'm uncertain or really suffering and I lose that connection, that's when I'll get a text from someone, hey, I don't know what this means, but I just saw this and it made me think of you and Anthony. It could be, a red bird landing on a place, eating mango from a plate, or someone else who sees owls, seeing owls. So not only was it extraordinary for me in terms of connecting with Anthony, but this idea of this spiritual connection that we all have. And those of us that, that's why it's so meaningful to me to share this, because by opening our hearts, we connect with other humans, transcending love and deep connection to a soulful level. Like when you establish that, it's profound.
Owls are my spirit animal. And owls, so I've spent a lot of time, 20 years studying owls.
Wow.
And filming them and chronicling them. Owls only, when you see an owl, that's by the owl's choice. The owl has let you see them. Otherwise, they're doing all their stuff and
no one knows.
And no one knows. Right. So for an owl to screech, to get attention, and then you give it attention, and then it sends a loving message, is powerful. And profound. Yeah.
And Anthony's finding those ways to get our attention, and he's finding ways. That's what's so beautiful about this, is so many others have shared, whether now they have the courage to go through trauma from losses of their past, or they're finding these connections that they didn't know about and was curious if I might help them understand what they mean. And it's just, these tethers of connection are just mind-blowing.
Yeah. And some people would say, well, these are clearly, we lovingly refer to them as woo-woo experiences out of the realm of what we would consider normal.
Yes.
But at the same time, these are invitations for us to think beyond whatever our limiting belief world is. And so certainly in a situation where your child takes his life, we would say, well, that's a fairly unconventional situation. So why should we not apply unconventional means to continue that conversation, whether it's internal or why say, oh yes, well, that's an outlier, but this is how you should act. So the fact that you have opened your hearts and opened your minds and really transcended the limitations of conventional thinking to an unconventional situation, it's that classic line, you can't solve something from the same level that it was created from. So here's something that created from a very, very deep soul, spirit, who knows level. That's how it can be met. So how has this understanding, because you both mentioned in a previous episode that you took fairly different paths to grieving and healing and understanding the journey, How has this whole thing post impacted your marriage, your relationship, and your relationships with your other family members and people in your world?
I mean, what comes to mind is just the giving the grace and space where possible. I mean, it's not without challenge for sure. And I think marriage in general is a journey, and there are ups and downs, and it's a roller coaster. I mean, we are both on, well, we're all on a roller coaster, and we might be going up and down at different points in time. So just acknowledging our own, where we are on our own path, and that one another is, going at their own pace and speed and on their own roller coaster as well. That has helped us. I think that's helped me tremendously, and just, allowing for us each to have that unique journey, and just, being respectful and honoring ourselves and each other in the process.
Yeah, I would agree. And what I would say is, this is just the early sharing of its impact on us. And I would say that the impact on our marriage, our relationship with our daughter, our relationship with our family, and even our relationship with our friends is significant and profound. It is very real. Like, in that moment, that night, every aspect of every relationship we had changed in that moment. And I think it's important to be really transparent about it. Yes, this idea, like, oh my gosh, it'll bring you so much closer together, is happening, but not in a fairy tale kind of way. Like, we're just loving and holding each other through these most challenging times. In fact, we're being brought together because of how hard it is to stay together and the work that's required to live through something like this. So you think about the marriage and you look at the stats that over 50% of marriages will end from a situation like this. We don't want that, but I could see unequivocally, crystal clear how those marriages could end. Luckily, we don't have blame around what happened in any way. The process is so different and unique and hard. And truthfully, just sharing for myself, like, when you've had an unimaginable loss in the way that we have, and somehow are still walking and breathing, like, on some level, anything that might happen between now and the rest of my life, like, can't reach that level. So therefore, I don't hold on to it as tight, if that makes sense. And it's we've had some things that have really, I don't say tested our vows, but tested marriage, because it would be easier to figure it out separately, or just fall into victimhood. Like, okay, yeah, that was super hard. This is too hard. Maybe I'm not into it. Or with our daughter, I mean, we talked about in the previous episode, like, how hard it was to navigate, where does autism start and end, and where does teenager start and end? Well, how about, where does being a teenage girl start and end, and being the brother of the kid who hung himself? So that is navigating. And then our parents' grief is so uniquely their own and different and generational in terms of how things are handled. So I would say that time and everything that we went through with Anthony was the hardest thing we've ever been through in our life. But I would also say for myself, what we're going through now around the questions that you've asked are the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life. Like really, truly how to be a dad to Belina in these times, and really, truly how to be a husband to Samara in these times. Like, you have to really, really want it, because it's an extraordinary amount of work And I think we're blessed that we've had these trainings and tools over the years. And I think that's why it's so important we're sharing what we are sharing, because it's everything's changed.
Everything's changed, and the courage and the strength that we've been given to show up in an authentic and vulnerable way has been extremely transformative and transcendental, and has just like propelled us so far forward in our healing and our growth. I can think of like public speaking, for example. I used to get a little bit nervous. I taught yoga at the Show Center. I'd get a little nervous the night before. And the other night I, was helping with Belina's dance team and, speaking to a room of 100 people, not nervous at all, like at all. Like the strength that I've been given and the courage I've been given, it's like, to show up and talk to, a room full of people, in contrast to the experience I've gone through of losing my son, it's like your perspective changes so dramatically. And I think in this, we've been given this courage and this strength to show up and to face, our challenges in a new way. And with having gone through this, it's been extremely empowering too, which is not something that I sought out. It just kind of happened as part of this experience. And I mean, it's dramatically different. It's a physical and an emotional strength to keep going.
Yeah. I would say just what you were talking about earlier about and I was talking about both ends of the spectrum. Like, we have found levels of intimacy and connection that we haven't had in 20 years of our marriage. We've also had scenarios and friction of which we both acknowledge, like, gosh, maybe it won't work out. Maybe we won't be together. And I've never had that in 20 years of marriage. Right. So it's like the depth and connection of intimacy and love is far greater than it's ever been, but so too is the creep of, well, like, maybe it's not going to work out.
Yeah, I mean, just expanding the experience, right? Of, hopefully most people on this planet will not have the experience of losing a child by suicide, but in so doing, it's created this intensity and this level of depth of the experience. And so we've chosen with that to transmute that, to transform that into helping others. And the help is through awareness. We don't feel like there's any magic bullet or pill or solution. It's the treatment is awareness, and it's through raising awareness, through creating vehicles for communicating, for taking difficult, heart-wrenching topics and exposing them, giving these teens a voice who are craving authenticity and vulnerability, and not necessarily receiving that from their parents or their grandparents who, heart's in the right places, but maybe they haven't had the experience that we've had. And so they're not open to that, but we are.
Right.
And we have. And they're saying to us, yes, we want more. The teens are leaning in. They're saying, please have this conversation. At the vigil, when speaking at mental health, it was like, oh shoot, yeah, we've got to talk about this. But you know what? In that pain and in that difficult conversation lies the solution and the freedom to let go of that and to move forward and to evolve, to ascend. That's what we want to do while we're here. We don't want to come and be on this planet to just creating the same problems that we've done for generations. We are here to like break through that and to grow and to create, a more beautiful, supporting, loving environment, and for everyone to remember our essence of love and our essence of community, and to ascend this experience and to make it a better place, to leave it better than when we found it. So we feel like this is the deeper calling, purpose, reason, if you will, the gift of this experience. If we can step into what we are being shown and what we can do with this, how we can transform this, how we can transmute this, it's to realize and remember the community, the ascension, the growth that's possible.
This is a healing journey for both of you and for everyone involved in your lives. And what is healing? It's returning to the memory of our wholeness. And you have that memory. And maybe it's the moment of your birth, and maybe it's the moment of Anthony's birth, or maybe it's, who knows what that looks like. It's different for everyone. But maybe you could talk a little bit, because I know you both have dug deep inside to reach into that well of forgiveness inside each of you. Forgiveness for self, forgiveness for others. And what does that look like? And because that is such a core part of the healing journey and the grieving process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that forgiveness aspect is the most important part. I remember early on really being stuck with and willing to convince anybody that I had failed as a parent. I mean, literally, your only job as a parent when the day is done is to protect your child. I mean, all the other things aside, like that's your only job. And I really struggled with for weeks and weeks that I had failed to protect our child. Another thing that I really struggled with was that accepting that our best days were behind us. You could name any scenario for me that would be beautiful and wonderful, and I could always finish the sentence by saying, yeah, and that would be much more magical, better, what have you, if Anthony were here. And when you stay in those types of thoughts and thinking, you're on that side of the line of suffering, and nothing's possible in that space. And for me, it was really, okay, we were doing early grief recovery with psychologists and therapists, and that was helpful. But quite frankly, the work with Tony Robbins, the immersive work, the Unleash the Power Within, especially this process called the Dickens process, where you literally live in that pain and the story and just every aspect of it and feel every aspect of it. And then you rewrite a new story, right? So kind of like my old BS story is that my best days are behind me because Anthony's passed on. Well, the truth of the matter is that, well, that may be a story. My destiny is still available to me, right? So within destiny, anything's possible. Also, this idea that I failed as a parent, my new story is that on some level, this is something that Anthony and I chose, right? I signed up for, if you will. That's actually what I said. My old BS story is that I failed as a parent because I couldn't protect my child, my number one responsibility. My new truth is that Anthony and I signed up for this. Anthony and I and Samara and anyone else related to this signed up for this for something greater, right? And just going through that process has shifted from, there's nothing I can do from those previous statements except suffer. But by getting clear on what's possible and forgiving myself and forgiving Anthony for what happened, now creates the possibility of something extraordinary that I could look back on. And for me, I felt it really important to forgive Anthony and to forgive myself especially for not acting that night, because that would trap us both. And regardless of any of the woo-woo stuff we've shared or will be sharing, I think many of us have this belief in mind that when we do ultimately transition and see our loved ones again, it will feel like a moment hasn't passed. So if that is true, which I believe to be true, why would I waste any of these moments between now and then? I don't want to be in that moment and be like, oh my gosh, hey, kid, wow, yeah, they're right. It feels like not a moment has passed. I want to be able to look back at it and say, look at all we did together in those moments, rather than saying, oh gosh, they were right. Why did I waste all those moments in suffering and pain when something could have come up with this?
Has Anthony helped you forgive yourself?
Yes, without question. And Samara's example of writing those letters and using the other hand, I was so resistant to doing it until the moment I decided that, I was ready. And then he just flew through me. The words just came out. He's been a huge part in that, in the spiritual connection, but also through the work that we've done with the mediums, and more recently, this powerful woman who's poured herself and soul into us, Jasenia Nozanilo. A lot of this work that we're doing with her has helped us connect with Anthony and receive that forgiveness from him.
One of the earliest teachings that you guys and I experienced was the early Vedantic teaching, we're talking 20 years ago, of Advaita, which is non-dualism. We could call that oneness. But love and grief, we could look at the duality of that. There's so many things that we could say, this and that, and this and that, and you have to choose one or this. But Advaita, non-dualism, teaches us it's all one. It's actually, they are contained in the same thing, and they're all parts of the same thing. So how has you, having an understanding of holding love and grief simultaneously, converging those into one clear flow, how has that helped you in the process of healing?
Grief has been multifaceted, as has the love, right? And you love your child, and they might do things that irritate you and, frustrate you and challenge you and encourage you to grow and all of these things. And yet it's this fundamental energy. I think grief and love are fundamentally the same aspects, maybe a mirror reflection. The grief can be an absence, a longing for that physical presence. It's also my latest lesson that I've been working with Jasenia on is that there's an aspect of selfishness in the grief too, because the grief is a longing for an experience that I'm craving, missing, and this presence that I'm no longer having, yet his soul is free. His soul is at peace. So if I can see that as loving him and wanting what's best for him and being able to relish in the experience that his soul is now having, my grief, my selfish longing for him to still be here is actually soothed. And that love comes back and kind of softens the grief. And then it transforms into, this other phase of the acceptance and the willingness to let go of my longing for it to be here and my acceptance and openness for it to be here in a new way, my love for him, my relationship with him, that energy of him loving me and me loving him back is still here, and it just transforms. And so when I can let go of this this feeding of this selfish need for him to be here physically and accept that he is still here physically, but maybe not in that body, that then I can find that path to freedom and the strength to keep going.
You referenced before, how it's hard enough to be a human on planet Earth, and then to be a parent, and then to be in a marriage, and then to be, we can go on, how challenging that whole process can be. But you have figured out how to survive one more day. And again, maybe it is one day at a time type of thing. Just like when you were holding bedside vigils, it was one day at a time. We really weren't thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. Just keep breathing right now. And one of the techniques I think that you have used and mastered is the tool of the alchemist, transmutation. You've taken this moment and infused it into something else on a journey through both of your hearts, and then suddenly turned it into the Endurant Movement. So from such deep, deep loss, and the depth of your pain of loss is usually the depth of your love. Those are the two things that sort of like equal each other out. So can you talk about what gives you the confidence to transmute whenever you, because I'm sure even just sitting here throughout our conversation, you have felt pangs of sadness, of emptiness, of agony, of a knife into you. What is the thing that helps you turn that around, alchemize that, and suddenly transmute it into bigger conversations, healing for others, and perhaps saving lives in that process?
Well, for me, it's less of a decision per se, an action, that it is of just an awareness of that heart open. Because the event and the experience was so extraordinary, it cracked my heart open, and everything that's come, whether it's love, connection, guidance, wisdom from people, anything that's resulted in this alchemy, this transmutation of pain to purpose, in my experience, has been through the letting go. There's nothing that I actively did, and I wasn't even aware. I didn't even know what alchemy meant, let alone transmuting pain into purpose, until you and then another woman shared, like, hey, this is what you're doing. And I was like, oh my gosh. And this is what you're doing, and it's really helping me and numerous others. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's amazing. Wow. And then I took a step back, like observing myself in it. And it's like, yeah, that's what's happening. But when I think about alchemy, I think about like a chemist, like taking pain and purpose and like mixing them together. Like, I'm just showing up with an open heart, and I can't impress upon you enough what I said earlier, that this woman said, like, the angels are all around us, but they can't come and help you and show you what you need or what your guides are trying to transmit to you unless you're open. So just by being open, being present, being day by day, like everything that I've needed has showed up just in time. And you've shared all the challenges and impact on relationship, the loss. I mean, that we haven't covered, nor should we, that medical bills, or that our business totally imploded and we haven't had income in over a year, and the things that would stress us out before, and the things that are likely stressing out many parents and husbands and wives and individuals who are trying to quote unquote make it. All of that has just gone away. And in many ways, everything we need has been showing up in time for when we need it. And I've found quite the opposite, in that when I'm thinking about doing something to have some sort of effect, it it doesn't have the impact of just letting go and just opening up to the possibility and knowing with certainty something that's going to come in, and it's going to be very clear, like, this is what I need. And that's super profound for me. I mean, you both know me. My life for 14 and a half years was, if something's going to happen that's needed, I have to make it happen. And there was levels of success in that over my life at a certain cost, where this is just happening organically and in a divine way, this alchemy. And then I just kind of step back every few days and just be like, oh my gosh, like, and it just feels better.
I always feel like Anthony's on riding some kind of stallion or on a rocket ship, and he just slows down as he passes the both of you and opens the door or says, ready?
Yeah.
Or you want to get on? You don't have to.
Yeah.
But I'm slowing down just so that you can. And then, poof, takes off right after that. Yes. And that really feels how the Endurant movement has been. I'm sure you've had fits and starts internally, and I'm sure you're like, well, how do we navigate this thing? And it just keeps getting pulled, and you're running to catch up with it because it's bigger than you.
Yes.
And it's touched so many lives, and they're inviting you. We're inviting you. Let's keep it going. Let's keep, what can't we do? What challenge can't be solved from this?
And that's really what's happening with the community and the teen voices, for example, and, hearing from many people, some of whom we know, some of whom are new to us, who are saying, thank you. I needed to hear this. This has opened up a topic of, a way, a method, a dialogue between my teen and, my family. And we've been able to talk now about the challenges for the youth, the challenges that my teen is having, the mental health issues they're facing, the suicidal thoughts that they've had that they've not been comfortable to share before. So it's giving us confirmation from the universe, from the community, from, the audience, if you will, this collective group of, energy saying to us, yes, keep going. What you're doing matters. Anthony's life matters. His legacy matters. This journey, this movement is worthwhile. It's making a difference. Keep going.
On that note, I think that's the perfect mic drop line. We have really explored so many different aspects. Thank you so much for speaking so beautifully from your heart. You guys have created something that speaks directly to teens, speaks directly to autism, speaks directly to parenting, and speaks directly to those three things coming into some kind of fusion, divine fusion, and they can be interacted with individually or in that collective. And I think there's such magnificent power in the Endurant movement. And I'm so grateful to be part of this episode of the Endurant Movement podcast. So thank you so much for sharing from your heart. Thank you so much for being willing to be so intimate regarding all those different feels and emotions that rest below the surface. And we can take it deeper in our next episode. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Endurant Movement podcast. My name is DavidJi. I've been here with Samara and Neal Tricarico. And stay tuned, because we're going to keep taking it deeper. And hopefully some aspect of this process will help you heal, be inspired, and share this message with others in your life.
Thank you for listening to The Endurant Show. If this conversation moved you, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To view the conversations, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And to be a part of the community, follow us at Endurant Movement. And lastly, if you feel called to support the movement and help us ensure no teen ever feels alone again, Visit endurantmovement.org to learn more, and if you can, make a donation. Together we can create lasting change, one conversation, one connection at a time.